On July 4th, 2024, a new gacha title from the well-known Chinese company MiHoYo was finally released after being in beta cycles for 23 months starting back in the year 2022, now known as Zenless Zone Zero. And despite making a splash on arrival thanks in large efforts to the marketing team as well as the art team for the game, it would be dishonest to say it didn't have its issues. While the gameplay was fun, it felt unrefined to what it could be, on top of issues with identity seen early on with modes that seemed to go against what players actually wanted to play the game for. But that was a long time ago, and since then Zenless Zone Zero has had many major updates during its live service cycle, and now we're on the precipice of patch 3.0, which looks to add even more. So whether you are a new player or a returning player seeing this, let's dive into Zenless and figure out if it is now the game for you. Before going into specifics on what Zenless has to offer or what it could improve upon, let's first go over the fundamental core design behind the game that will be an instant deal breaker for some. That of which is the fact that ZZZ is a gacha game, a game genre designed and shipped as a free-to-play model, however with a big catch. The catch being that the game uses the monetization model involving spending either real or in-game currency to get characters, weapons, or skins, all using the currency known as polychrome. Almost everything in Zenless gives polychrome to a certain extent, meaning that without spending money, over time you will still get enough of this currency to pull a character you want. To paint a picture of what to expect from a new player's perspective, if you're going to be starting out fresh, you're going to have a ton of in-game currency available via the permanent modes to get. And from there you can either spend or save the currency obtained via those methods. But eventually those resources will be used up, and from that point you will have to rely on the pulls handed out to you in updates. To help with all this, the game also rewards tapes that can be used on standard banner in order to pull characters to help your account. The standard banner gives constant access to characters and weapons that over time will help fill out dead zones in your account. For example, the A-rank agent Nicole and the S-rank stunner Lycon, who are amazing for any account and can both be picked up here on top of weapons of key interest. All of which only get better the more copies you get of them, whether it's from the standard banner or losses on the limited time banners. Banners in Zenless are how you obtain the characters and weapons that you will have access to. They each will have a small rate to drop an S-rank character by default that slowly increases the more you pull. That is not where the catch ends, as now there is one final check you need to pass in order to finally get what you're looking for, which is an RNG check. You will have to pass one final 50-50 chance where if you win, you get the limited character whose banner you were pulling on, but if you lose, you get one of the standard S-rank agents, Nekomata, Grace, Lycon, Kolida, Rina, and Soldier 11. So you could spend 90 pulls just to get a stray cat instead of a character you wanted, which sucks, and there's no sugarcoating that, and it's one of the main reasons people do not play this genre of game. However, the game does have a system in mind for if this happens. Because in this scenario, the next banner you pull on, whether it's a new banner or the same one you just lost on, you will get the character guaranteed. The weapon banner as well is very similar, with the exact same system as before, however swapping out the 50-50 coin flip for the character in exchange for a 75-25 chance in your favor to get the weapon. And the rules follow the agent's banner pretty much to a T, where if you pass the 75%, you get the weapon, but if you fail that 25%, you get a standard S-rank engine. But now say you pass the 50-50 and the 75-25 chance, and on your account you now have the character and weapon box set. What can you do from there, if you even can? What you can do next, if you so choose, is you can pull on the same banner for characters and get something called a Mindscape, which are buffs or kit adjustments for the characters that you can unlock when getting a copy. The same can also apply to weapons, but they are generally considered less worthwhile to get than the Mindscapes. Finally, with the core systems of acquiring the main content of the game out of the way, we can start diving into the other parts of the game. So let's start with the main selling point of Zenless being the combat. The combat is a mixture of beat 'em up paired with the team building elements you'd see more akin to turn-based RPGs, with you controlling one agent at a time in a team of 3, and combining fast-paced fun gameplay with the satisfaction of building a team that works together. And within this, the players are going to have to manage their agent's skills, ultimates, and other utility in order to achieve max results in any form of content. The very last part of this system to mention is that each agent has a specific class and element unique to them. Each character in the game has an element ranging from the options seen here, with the element being more or less important depending on the class you're using. Said classes being Anomaly, Rupture, Attack, Stun, Defense, and lastly Support. The classes are all simple in concept, and after playing around it won't be long until you find your preferred play style, with the game even having niche styles of gameplay for those that wish to play outside the normal gameplay loop, like the double attacker playstyle with the Agent Seed. Despite the building blocks of the combat and character design being simple, the depth that it can reach is very satisfying, even going as far as having texts and different strategies depending on the settings you choose, like auto or manual change, changing how you do stun rotation combos, as well as features like dodging and parrying at the same time to min-max some agents who prefer it if you really want to try and stretch your skill, like with Promea. Altogether, showcasing that despite the simple gameplay, there are layers that allow for skill expression to prop up your number performance instead of it being more at the mercy of your stats without being able to influence it during the actual fight, like in other gacha games. With the combat out of the way and putting all the technical stuff aside, something that truly brings everything to life during all this is the amazing animation and voice work that every character brings to the table. Whether it's their attack animations, ultimates, skills, running, idols, or even recovery frames if you're willing to watch them, all the characters are giving a lot of personality and individuality to show off when you are just casually experiencing fights or story environments. This is all paired on top with the fact that Zenless has always cooked with its music, even having dynamic music now during boss fights or when playing with specific characters like Astra Yao on your team, where when activating her ultimate, she will play her song Original Me, both either in vocal or instrumental. This all compounds together to give a very satisfying casual experience while keeping the depth for the players who want it, and still allowing the players of any experience level to enjoy the game even if they don't plan to get as invested as some of the other players are. The combat itself is an aspect that greatly improved since launch. For players who played early on and left without returning, you might remember only being able to use one ultimate per team. Nowadays, each character builds their ult separately and can each spend their ult when the player chooses, which allows for way more freedom since the early days of the game. And on top of that, the removal of TV mode, which, while providing an alternative gameplay loop that some did enjoy, was a widely disliked form of gameplay by a lot of players, and its inclusion taking up time or resources away from the actual combat that people wanted to experience. So if you were one of the players who were scared away by the TV mode in Zenless early days because the gameplay just wasn't your thing, patch 1.4 and onwards has gotten rid of all the TV mode stuff. There's no more stuff related to it in the game, only having elements from patches 1.0 to 1.2 left from the early stories, and now it is a much more streamlined and enjoyable experience with the combat and story flow, even if the story itself will still be in a little bit of a weird state, but we'll get to that later. And besides the combat changing and the removal of TV mode, we've also gotten a ton of quality of life improvements since launch that make the game feel more established. Features like the quick menu for discs and other tabs, being able to craft batteries at will for later use, helping other players clear their dailies so both you and the player are getting rewarded, and of course polychrome tracking recently added for per patch and permanent tracking basis, all of which for you to be able to see how much you have available. And lastly, one of the most impactful and important additions included recently is the shop, where you can exchange materials for either an S-rank weapon or agent, with each requiring special currency either obtained via crafting, the battle pass, event handouts, or in case for the agent currency specifically, when you get a copy of a character you have maximum mindscapes for. These small changes over the course of the game's lifespan have enhanced quality of life for the player tremendously, providing much easier or different methods to doing tasks that previously would be considered very annoying to do. And with 3.0 on the horizon, I'm sure that even more features will be added for the player's convenience if the same pattern we've seen is to continue. And that's not to say, of course, that Zenless only has good changes or decisions being made. The biggest topic right now in current discourse for ZZZ is the endgame, with a lot of players feeling like the endgame is getting out of hand with the HP numbers rising into the millions, while having very specific shilly buffs for characters that sometimes only one agent out of the entire roster can benefit from. And while this doesn't really hurt Deadly Assault much, since all you need is 6 out of the 9 stars to get the pulling currency rewards for that mode, the other major endgame mode, Shinyu Defense, is more divisive, as not only are the rewards increased for that mode up to 780 polychrome rather than 300, but also during Season 2 the mode underwent a revamp that most consider unnecessary, as what the change did is changed how you play slightly in a way that makes the game flow feel worse. The game mode now works off of a score multiplier, starting with a score of 5 times dropping all the way down to 1 times, meaning that the optimal way to get score isn't always the optimal way to route or play a fight, as normally you would save key things like ultimates for the stun window to do the most damage. But that damage in the stun window is countered by the fact that your multiplier dropped from 5 times down to 4.2 times or lower, meaning that in some cases it's now better to burn stuff like ultimates earlier than you would usually use in a fight, just so the score will be higher and so you can get the polychrome, which goes against every other form of gameplay you can experience in the game and making it feel a bit muddy. Meanwhile, other modes like the tower haven't gotten much support at all since their inclusion, so after a certain level and reaching max rewards, it's no longer worth playing for a lot of players, as that time can be spent either building agents, getting more polychrome, other things, and the gameplay isn't unique or fun enough away from the main game to warrant bringing players there just to enjoy it. All of these issues with the current endgame, combined with the grind to get good discs for characters being reliant on RNG or RNG manipulation, makes it feel suffocating at times when approaching the endgame, especially when it comes to a new player perspective, where it feels like to reach the new goalposts they've set, you're reliant on the free characters that they hand out on important updates like Zhao or the upcoming Pyrois, or alternatively, they feel like they have to pull the new characters that are currently on the banner in order to have a chance to get the polychrome that they'd be missing out on otherwise in endgame. It must also unfortunately be stated that the story in modern Zenless Zone Zero is where a lot of issues also tend to be, as the story often circumvents major plot and emotional beats for either epic aura farm moments, or always trying to keep the status quo of the fairy tale ending, all the while still having an issue of constant reiteration and lack of natural flowing connections to the characters in favor of forcing specific moments that don't have the emotional setup to make said moments feel impactful. The characters and environmental storytelling also suffer with this, as not only do they not have those story beats to set them up in a proper way, they also suffer in conjunction from an issue of lack of good representation and diversity within the roster. And before this matter continues, it should be made aware that Hoyo is a Chinese company, and while it is understood that a lot of these issues stem from MiHoYo being a Chinese company stationed in China, and as such having to listen to the Chinese governmental laws, it provides a reason for why these issues exist, but it does not justify the reason for why they exist. And this ties back to the story beats and environmental storytelling issues in Zenless because of these restrictions placed upon themselves by the government and also trying to appease a wide audience. Characters are suffering tremendously, and so are sections of the story, with characters like Alice and Yuzuha constantly being a question mark and never fully confirmed on if they're together, despite constantly being together in the story and very relationship coded, as well as the fact that the only character in the game with a skin color that looks darker than a sheet of paper is Nekomata. And while the issue isn't just that it's Nekomata herself, it's more so that we only have Nekomata when the potential for more has been very plentiful. For example, the Sons of Caledon, a faction of a gang in a desert-like region, all don't have tans or tan lines or any showing of deviation from very clear white skin. And while for characters like Pulchra and Lighter, that makes sense given that their designs have a lot of fur or clothing covering a majority of their body, the same cannot be said for Caesar, Lucy, and Piper, who all show skin, yet the sun has no effects on their bodies, which takes the player not only out of the environment, but also will make the player catch on to the lack of skin representation in the game. Not to mention that all the different stories, cultures, and potential that's being missed out by not diversifying the roster and integrating things from said cultures into Zenless, which would attract more players and let those players feel even more close to the agents that we're already growing to love. Thankfully, Zenless seems to be recently aware that it's been doing things in a way that players don't like. And over time, over the course of the 2.x update patch line, one of the greatest strengths that I think the game has shown is the devs' willingness to listen and change a lot of the issues the community seems to have. Whether it's combat feel or quality of life like menu updates, or even just something as simple as bug fixes, they always seem to at least attempt to try and make things better for everyday use. And we already seem to have confirmation of features coming in 3.0 to make things even more easier on the player. And while these changes alone don't fix, nor should they distract from all the other issues the game currently has, it at least gives hope that the devs are still willing to listen and change even the massive issues so long as we keep showing feedback and they keep willing to support us in return. This all comes together in a package that results in a game with fun combat and insane potential for its characters, stories, and strategies, all while making the experience as fun for casuals as it is for more competitive gamers. Yet is held back by the inherent consumer unfriendliness of the genre, as well as a lack of structure when it comes to their writing and characterization of their casts, as well as putting self-placed restrictions and limitations in place that seem to enforce the status quo in order to prioritize profit over player. And while the future is promising, with new hints of good features being swept in by the winds in 3.0, it also must be asked about time and how much players are willing to keep waiting for these updates, and if the big important issues are going to be fixed or if they're just going to be buried by constant band-aid fixes. And while I myself do enjoy the game, enough so to review it, I also want to be critical about the game I enjoy in hopes that Zenless will take these criticisms and implement fixes in order to become a greater game in the long run. Thank you for watching, and to any newer returning proxies out there, stay safe in the hollows.